Hello, I'm River, and welcome to my Devil May Cry The Bloody Pals paint series. Today, I'll be working on Devil Trigger Dante, which comes in the Devil Trigger expansion pack. This model is a little tricky to work with purely because it has lots of long, fragile pieces, but as long as you're careful, it shouldn't be too hard to deal with. The sword also kind of makes it tricky to get into the leg, but we work with that. I start off, like I do any other model, by trimming up the mold lines. You'll mostly find these around the extremities, the arms, the legs, along the wings, the blade of the Devil Sword Dante, as well as along the horns, as well as along the little bitty talons that curl up on the edges of the wings. I prime the model with matte black. It doesn't reach every spot. It's more so a little light on the underparts of the body, like sort of in the crotch area and under the sword, and in between the wings, right along the spinal column. I use matte black because we're going to be mostly keeping the model entirely black. First step, I take Cambion Crimson. I begin a generous coat of watered down Cambion Crimson. That way it can get everywhere I need it to be. I want it to really sink into the crevices along the chest cavity, the horns, the sort of like spiky protrusions on the arms and legs, as well as along the sort of like stony sort of flute of the Devil Sword Dante. I try not to get it all the way to the blade tips, but if you do, that's not a big deal. We can just come back and fix that later. This is going to be the base of the fiery effect that the Devil Trigger form has. For the wings, I kind of put the paint along the center of the wings, almost reaching the edge, but not making it all the way there. I do this for both the inside and the outside. You may want to do this differently, and that's perfectly fine. I take that Cambion Crimson and mix it with a little bit of Rust Monster Orange. We're going to be doing a little bit of blending. You can try wet blending if you wish. I sort of go back over all the parts I had just painted red, and in a slightly less surface area, take the reddish orange and spread it out so that it appears that it's glowing orange from within and getting redder towards the edges. The chest cavity is a major part of this. We'll keep returning to these various areas in order to sort of build up that color, build up the blend. I'm not outstanding with this technique, but it's also not too difficult to learn, so I take a wing at it and I think it turns out alright. I take about 4 or 5 passes at this, adding a little bit of Rust Monster each time. You'll see eventually as you start doing this with each very thin layer, it'll sort of bring out the sort of like fiery color, almost like a burning charcoal with the black exterior of the rest of Devil Trigger Dante's sort of like weird carapace. The wings don't come out exactly how they do in the game purely because they have these weird sort of like hatched checker mark patterns in the model, whereas in the game it's these intricate swirls. With matte black, I just come back and I clean up any of the parts that the primer didn't reach. Dungeon Stone, I take a dry brush and I very lightly coat all of the black parts of Devil Trigger Dante's carapace. I do this to sort of give the illusion that like the light coming down on it, it won't remain like in game. It isn't seen as a glossy black, but rather a just very dark sort of ashy color. It remains very dark in some parts, but we'll come back with matte black later and sort of re-darken down those specific spots. I get the edges of the wings, the legs, the arms, the shoulders, the hands, as well as the handle of the Devil Sword Dante. The bit of the face that sort of sticks out directly in front of the model's head. It's sort of like a very square appearance to it. Also, don't be afraid to go over some of the more like magma-y looking bits so that you can come back later and sort of bring out that orangey, fiery bit a little bit more. It sort of seems like it's kind of hardening magma with like a little bit of the lava sticking out. Come back with that same black, and I just very lightly get the edges of the spiky carapace where the orangey, fiery color is coming from. I get the ribs, as well as these protrusions along the wrists, sort of to just darken it down and make it seem more like magma, molten rocky. Mithril silver. We're just going to very carefully coat the edge of the Devil Sword Dante. I use the side of my brush to make sure I don't get anywhere on the model that I don't wish to get it. I come back and kind of give it a little bit of texture. Just very carefully getting the edge of the sword so it seems almost like jagged or imperfect. Rust Monster Orange. Come back and I do one final run with this. I water it down a good amount and I just get the very center of all of the reddish orange colors that we put all over the model. In the center of his head, within the horns. Very careful edge highlighting along the weird spiky protrusions along the arms and legs. I try to get the cavity of the chest filled as much as I can without getting too overboard. I take a very light dry brush and I sort of just poke at, stipple, and dry brush the sort of center of all of the flamey wing bits. That way it kind of pulls together all of the orange and the red. I do this very lightly so as to not completely take it over with the orange. But if that happens, it's not the biggest deal. You can do another pass with the red, or you can just keep it how it is. I go ahead and I color the direction-facing markers, that same Rust Monster Orange that we had used for Dante's original model. It might take a couple passes purely because we're using black as a base this time instead of the gray. So take your time and make sure it's watered down so that it doesn't leave brush marks. And with that, I call my Devil Trigger Dante done. This model, although very simple, only using a handful of colors, still a good model to practice your blending with. I know I don't use the technique too much, I mostly just do like very simple sort of effects, but I had a real good time working with this one, and I hope you do too. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.